Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's PENTalk. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them through the question box. We'll answer as many questions at the end as time allows. If we don't get to your question today, we will follow up with you afterwards. Tomorrow, you will receive an email with a link to replay today's broadcast. So let's get started. Hosting today is Dave Baer, National Director of TPA Markets at Pentegra. Dave's vast degree of knowledge and enjoyment for helping advisors expand their practices has made him the go-to expert for 316 fiduciary outsourcing and TPA services. Today, Dave is going to provide an overview of the ins and outs of defined benefit plans. Dave, I will now hand things over to you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for joining. So kind of an interesting topic today. We've had several pen talks throughout the year about cash balance pension plans and defined benefit pension plans and comparing the two and this and that. So this is kind of a wrap up, if you will, of what we've talked about throughout 2023 regarding defined benefit work. So feel free to go back and take a listen or take a look at previous pen talks about the similar topics or in similar vein. Today we're going to talk about traditional defined benefit, pension plans. What is a traditional plan? What is a non-traditional plan? Why adopt a defined benefit plan, traditional or non-traditional? Basic plan requirements of any defined benefit plan, and then we want you to be cognizant of the role and duties of cash balance plans. Any defined benefit plan really, and Maybe before we move on to the next slide, maybe we're going to start with, I'll cue the next slide up. Excuse me. So what is a traditional defined benefit plan and why even bother with them? Do they even exist anymore? Well, they do exist. While there are fewer and fewer traditional DB plans being adopted, they still exist. You will find in philanthropic non-for-profit groups occasionally, you'll find a traditional defined benefit pension plan. Sometimes in corporate settings, you will still find traditional defined benefit pension plans. Banks, community banks, regional banks, smaller banks. Think of your hometown and think of one of the locally owned banks. And if it has been around for 25 or more years, it may have a defined benefit pension plan, that they might need some assistance with, and especially for a financial advisor, there can be opportunity to get involved with these plans. Sometimes you find that they are currently frozen to do benefit accruals. We'll talk about that in a minute. And sometimes they are looking for an opportunity to change them, modify them, wind them down. And oftentimes, especially if they're working with a smaller actuarial firm, they might not be getting the consulting relevant to closing down a plan. How do you close the plan down, or what happens eventually, or how can you modify it to make it relevant today? So we might segue here and there during the conversation and talk about those topics. So traditional defined benefit pension plan, the word pension should be a clue. It's a program that provides a monthly or annual benefit rather than a lump sum or an account balance that you might see in a profit sharing plan or in a 401k plan. So it's expressed in that way. An employer's document or an employer's plan might read, stick with us until age 65 and you will get a monthly benefit equal to something. Kind of similar to Social Security payments in that idea that it's an ongoing payment rather than a lump sum that someone would ordinarily take. So the benefit provided it's expressed as a monthly or annual pension paid at normal retirement age, or paid at whatever age benefits fully accrue. Benefits generally accrue to each participant as they earn years of service. So it would not be uncommon, skipping down there a little bit, to see a formula that says benefits will accrue at the rate of $100 per month for each year of service to a maximum of 20 years of service. So every month during those first 20 years that a participant works, they earn an extra $100 of future retirement benefit. Other similar or other formulas can read benefits will accrue at a rate of, say, 5% of pay per year of service for a maximum of 15 years, something like that. So that's how these plans are written. They're not written like a 401k plan with a match that says the employer will match dollar for dollar up to 5%, or dollar for dollar up to 6%, or dollar for dollar up to 3% and 50 cents on the next 2%, like a safe harbor formula might read, or a matching formula might read. Instead, they read in this way, that work with us, work here for X number of years, and your benefits will accrue at a certain amount each month. That doesn't change vesting rules, by the way. Here we're going to talk about non-discrimination testing, but the idea, but something I don't want to move away from is that even though benefits are accruing at a certain rate, doesn't mean the employee owns them at 100%. So you could have a situation where an employee may have worked for 10 years, okay, and they have not yet earned 100% of the available benefit, but they are 100% vested in what they have earned. Or conversely, perhaps they've only worked 4 years, and so they've accrued 4 years of benefit, but with a 5-year vesting schedule in a traditional defined benefit plan, they don't own it entirely yet. So if they terminate at that time, they not only have not accrued the maximum benefit that they can earn, but they don't own the benefit that they have earned. These plans are subject to non-discrimination testing. Benefit formulas within a DB plan can vary from one group of participating employees to another. So think if you are familiar with new comparability profit sharing, where owners can get a higher benefit than employees, that is also potentially true in a defined benefit plan, where you can have a higher monthly benefit. The example given here is all designated management employees will receive a normal retirement benefit of $500 per month per year of service. Non-management employees will receive a normal retirement benefit of $100 per month per year of service. And that's subject to non-discrimination testing. The non-discrimination testing generally is designed, we don't design it so that it can easily fail. The idea here is that, if you have a profit sharing plan with new comparability, you're all familiar with the fact that, you might have to adjust the funding every year to the non-highly compensated employees to pass testing. That's not so easily done with a defined benefit plan. Also why defined benefit plans are often paired with a profit sharing plan component, or a 401k plan with profit sharing, so that if we have to adjust contributions to pass testing, we can do it on the defined contribution side rather than doing it on the defined benefit side. Now, while the normal form of benefit in a traditional defined benefit pension plan is a monthly benefit payment, and that's how the statements read. That's how everything is expressed. Plans may allow for lump sum distributions as an alternate form of distribution when participants retire. That's not uncommon in a traditional defined benefit pension plan. So what's a non-traditional defined benefit plan? Well, as I mentioned early on, we've had several other webinars this year, several other PENTalks about cash balance plans. And cash balance plans are non-traditional defined benefit plans. There are others. There are floor offset plans, and there are 412(e)(3) plans that are fully insured. So there are other non-traditional pension plans, but the most common are cash balance plans. And cash balance plans, they're considered non-traditional because the normal form of benefit is expressed as a hypothetical account balance rather than a future monthly pension. So again, participants in a cash balance plan, they get a statement that says your hypothetical account balance is X, whereas participants in a traditional defined benefit pension plan get a statement that says, or that reads, your future hypothetical benefit is $500 per month, beginning at age 65, or something to that effect. So just like traditional defined benefit plans, cash balance plans are subject to non-discrimination rules, minimum funding under IRC 430, funding-based limits under 436, maximum tax deduction rules under 404. The minimum funding is probably one of the most important things to take away from this or any other seminar about cash balance plans or traditional defined benefit plans, and that is that they are subject to minimum funding standards. It's not uncommon for smaller, closely held businesses to adopt non-traditional plans like cash balance plans. And the question always comes up, well, what happens if things change? What happens if my life changes? What happens if my business changes? You're telling me that I'm tied into this contribution. There are ways to modify retirement plans. But they do have minimum funding standards. Traditional defined benefit pension plans have much more rigid minimum funding standards than do cash balance plans. And that's because when a participant accrues a benefit in a traditional plan, that benefit has to be funded all the way through to normal retirement age, and that's quite a hill to climb. Cash balance plans, the accruals are year to year, and therefore in a non-traditional defined benefit pension plan or a cash balance plan, changes to the employer's business, changes to the sponsor's business that might affect their ability to continue the plan are more easily adapted to than with a traditional pension plan. Benefits of a cash balance plan or a traditional plan must be definitely determinable. So that means very simply that unlike a profit sharing plan, which people like to compare cash balance plans to, profit sharing plans, the end result is dependent upon the year-by-year funding and the earnings of the that the participant of the investments that the participant chooses. In the cash balance plan, the end result is defined in the plan, and the plan has to fund towards that end result, assuming it doesn't take a turn, in the middle where it might change the funding or change the plan design or freeze the plan or something to that effect. Cash balance plans have gained popularity because, again, the benefits are expressed as a hypothetical account balance, similar to 401k profit sharing plans. Participants like those. They like to see that. it's more familiar to them. And it's important to note that cash balance plans are, here we say, often paired with 401k profit sharing plans. Frankly, I can't think of an instance where we set up a cash balance plan that is not paired with a 401k profit sharing plan. As I've mentioned in other webinars, it comes down to the non-discrimination testing. The non-discrimination testing is based on a future value basis rather than on a current contribution basis. So future values are created by taking the current plan account and contributions and forecasting them forward based on earnings assumptions. And cash balance plans, we use typically a fixed earnings assumption of anywhere from 2 to 5%. Those are safe harbor assumptions in cash balance plans. When we're pairing that with a profit sharing component in a 401k plan, we can use a higher earnings rate when we're projecting the profit sharing plan forward. So if we're using new comparability as a testing safe harbor against the cash balance plan, we can use an 8.5% earnings rate on the profit sharing side, as opposed to a 2, 3, 4, or 5% earnings rate on the cash balance side. So therefore, if you think about it, if we need to give all or a few of the non-highly compensated employees a little bit extra, we can give them a little bit extra in the profit sharing plan, pass our testing, because we're going to project that forward at 8.5%, as opposed to giving them more in the cash balance plan and projecting that forward at 2 or 3 or 4% or maybe even 5%. So the higher earnings rate allows us to give less to our non-highly compensated employees in order to pass testing. What are some basic defined benefit requirements? Well, first of all, the plan is adopted and administered per a written instrument, a plan document that defines among the rules the definition of terms, the eligibility, plan entry, plan benefits. We were talking a few minutes ago about the potential opportunity for working with existing plans out there, and it's very common when we get called in on a traditional defined benefit plan. It's very common to have a plan document that hasn't been looked at in years, and not necessarily that it hasn't been updated for compliance, but it perhaps hasn't been looked at in years for plan design. Especially in the education world, it's not uncommon for us to come across a plan that was set up decades ago by people who are no longer part of the educational institution that sponsors the plan. Those folks had the best of intentions when they designed the plan way back when, but times have changed, and people have changed, and anymore those plans need to be looked at. And again, it's not that they haven't necessarily been kept up for compliance or required restatements or mandatory amendments, but no one's looked at the design to see who gets what and how that works. We mentioned earlier that benefits must be definitely determinable, and the examples here are that in a traditional plan, that might read that normal retirement benefit is defined to be $100 per month for each of the first 5 years of service, plus $500 per month for each additional year of service. Where a cash balance plan might read, Class A shareholders receive a pay credit of $50,000 annually into their cash balance account. Class B non-highly compensated employees receive 2.5% annual pay credit. Now, for those of you in the audience who are extremely familiar with new comparability profit sharing, which I've used as a reference throughout our talk, that second definition there probably feels similar to the way things used to be, but not exact. Whereas in new comparability profit sharing plans, more often than not now, we define the rate group classes under new comparability with each employee in a separate rate group, even if we tend to treat all the non-highly compensated employees and or all of the owners the same. We still define them in separate rate groups. That's not something that we can do in a cash balance plan. Well, I take that back. We could theoretically define each group by name. That's something that is technically allowed, but administratively not feasible once you get more than a handful of employees, and especially once you have turnover. Then the thing to remember is that you're going to have to amend it every year. If Robbie at the front desk, who's defined as a separate rate group class in the cash balance plan, if he terminates employment and you go through a couple more over the next year, you might be doing a lot of amendments to fill that rate group in your cash balance dynamic. So not something that we want to do very often. Plans must comply with all non-discrimination testing, including but not necessarily limited to minimum funding. We talked a little bit about that. Funding-based limits, under 436, maximum tax deductions, minimum participation, average benefits test, minimum allocation gateway, rate group testing. I want to touch a little bit on some of these tests, not in too much detail, but minimum participation, or what we sometimes refer to as coverage. We don't mean coverage in the same way that we would under a profit sharing plan under 410B, but minimum participation under 401A26 is different in a defined benefit plan than it is in a defined contribution plan. Some of you in the audience may be familiar with what we call the 50-40 rule. And that is that in a defined benefit plan, the DB plan must cover or must have participation equal to the lesser of 50 participants or 40% of the otherwise eligible participants. And that's true of both a traditional and a non-traditional plan. And we find that this can be very useful in organizations that have lots of highly compensated employees who the owners might want to most favor versus lots of non-highly compensated employees. So we can, in that perfect world, we end up with our 40% test being all key or not or highly compensated employees or people that the owner wants to favor as opposed to carving out. The other point I want to make, though, is that, and I don't really have an example here. I thought about throwing one in, but rate group testing can be very important. Rate group testing is where we have to determine that a certain number of non-highly compensated employees have to receive a benefit equal to or greater than the highly compensated employees. Now, notice I didn't say a contribution equal to or greater than. I said a benefit equal to or greater than. So using the context that I gave earlier, if we have younger employees, and if we're using the higher earnings rate that we can project forward on the defined contribution side as our testing safe harbor, then we want to give our young people a little bit more to get them to a rate group that's equal to or higher than our highly compensated employees. The tricky part of that is that more often than not, it's the younger, lower paid employees who we have higher turnover in or with. And so if we have a last day rule in our profit sharing, which most of you are probably familiar with, and you say, "Oh, I like that. That way my clients don't have to give a contribution to somebody who didn't work all the way to the end of the year." But if we have that caveat in the defined contribution plan, then and that person leaves, and that's the person who is helping us pass our rate group test. Now we have to go find the next youngest person who might not be nearly as young as the person that we lost and might earn a lot more than the person that we lost. So we have to be very careful when we're working together, helping a client determine what to do with their plan design, and make sure that we're not reliant on one person who's been there just over a year and is dramatically younger, and we don't know what they might do in the future if they, who's the next person, if you will, to pass the test. That's what we have to be concerned about. Roles and responsibilities of the parties involved with the plan. It's important that we know who's involved in everything here. So we have our business owner in the middle, and we have our financial advisor. That's most of you who are in the audience. And who else is involved? Well, we have an actuary, and Pentegra, we have our own actuarial team, and of I think 6 or 8 actuaries, I'm not sure. And 401k TPA, of course, that's Pentegra as well. But notice tax advisor or CPA. Very often, it's actually important. This is actually beneficial for the CPA to be involved, because with these plans, first of all, we're talking about higher contributions, and most business owners will want to consult their CPA before they jump into it. But also, it gives you, the advisor, the chance to demonstrate your talents to your client's CPA. If you've got the CPA involved or in the room where it happens, if you will, then they get to see that you've brought some valuable information to the table, and you have the chance to impress them by showing them that you're not just all about the investments and finding the next investment that does really well and is lowering cost. It broadens your value to the client and to their advisors. So that's our last content slide. The next one is just closing remarks, questions, thank yous. Thank everybody for joining. Closing remarks. Get out there and look around for these opportunities. Look around with your local banks. Look around with nonprofit organizations, United Way, or things like that might have a traditional retirement plan or defined benefit pension plan that you could get involved with. Lizzie, any questions? I know we're at time, but any questions right now, or do you want to pivot those to answer later?
Yep. If anyone has any questions about the presentation, you can absolutely still submit them through the question or chat box, and we will reach back out to you sometime this week or early next. I just want to thank Dave very much for this presentation and for you all attending today. As I said earlier, you will receive a link to replay today's broadcast in an email tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.